My name's Travis. I'm 34, from a small farming town in Kentucky you've never heard of unless you've driven through it and needed gas. I was born and raised on a 90-acre farm that's been in my family for 3 generations. And for most of my life, I believed, naively, that if I worked hard, stayed out of trouble, and did right by my folks, that farm would be mine someday. It wasn't. I was 16 when I started waking up at 4:30 every morning to check the chicken coops and feed the calves before school. Rain or frost, mud or manure, it didn't matter. My dad used to say, "That's what builds grit, boy." So I gritted. I shut up and worked. Meanwhile, my younger brother Derek, 6 years my junior, got to sleep in, play Xbox, and skip chores because he was the baby. When I turned 18, my dad told me it was time to move out. Not in a "you're ready to fly" kind of way. More like, "we're done feeding you." So I left. I worked in a body shop during the day and cleaned out oil tanks at night just to cover rent. Later, I joined the Army, did 2 tours, then used the GI Bill to get my degree in electrical engineering. Not once during all that time did my parents call to say they were proud. But they sure called when the tractor broke down or the well pump failed. Because guess who still sent money home? Me. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I thought, this is still my home. That land matters. I kept telling myself that when the time came, they'd see I'd earned it. That I was the one who could keep it going. 6 months ago, I took time off work and finally went home for a visit. It had been almost 4 years since I'd been back. The barn still had that sour smell of hay and rusted tools. The screen door still creaked. My mom cried when she saw me, which threw me off until I realized it wasn't from joy. It was guilt. Over dinner, pot roast and mashed potatoes, just like old times, my dad cleared his throat and said, "Travis, we wanted to tell you in person. We've updated the estate plans." I looked up. "Okay?" "We've put the farm in Derek's name. Full ownership." I blinked. Thought maybe I misheard. "Wait, all of it?" He nodded. "He's been here. He knows the land. You're doing great on your own. You don't need it." I just sat there. I couldn't even chew. Couldn't swallow. My mom patted my hand like that made it better and said, "It's not about who deserves what, honey. It's about practicality. Derek's here. You're not." My blood started to simmer. Let me get this straight. I worked that land from the time I could hold a shovel. I helped build the north fence line with Grandpa back when I was 12. I sent money when the back roof collapsed in 2018. And Derek? Derek's biggest contribution was turning the old tool shed into a recording studio for his crypto podcast. I excused myself, went out to the barn, stood there staring at the rusted tractor I used to fix with my bare hands. And that's when I saw it. Propped in the corner behind a bag of feed. An old filing cabinet with my grandpa's name on it. Curious, I opened the top drawer. Inside were dusty folders, a few tax forms, and one envelope marked in faded ink. Land title, 1993, original deed. I pulled it out, heart pounding, opened it. And there it was. The north 32 acres had never been officially transferred to my father. They were still in my grandfather's name. I drove straight to the assisted living home where Grandpa Henry had moved after his stroke 3 years ago. He was thinner, slower, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. He grabbed my hand and said, "You came back. I always hoped you would." I didn't say anything right away. I just held up the folder. "Grandpa, why didn't you give this to Dad?" He looked at me, sharp as ever, and said, "Because I was waiting to see who'd come back for it." When I got back to the house, dinner was cleared. Derek was sitting in Dad's recliner, one leg tossed over the side like he owned the place. Mom was folding laundry on the couch, humming like nothing had happened. I stood in the doorway, holding that folder with Grandpa's signature still fresh in my mind. "I just came from seeing Grandpa," I said, voice even. We talked. Derek looked up and grinned. "Oh, you mean the old man you forgot about for 10 years? I didn't answer. I walked over to the dining table, laid the deed down flat, and looked at my parents. You told me the entire farm was in Derek's name, I said, but the North 32 acres. Grandpa never signed that over. It's still his. My dad's face twitched. That's old paperwork. It doesn't matter. It matters to him, I said, and it matters legally. He stood up, slow and heavy. You need to drop this, Travis. You moved away. You made your choice. And there it was. You made your choice. That line hit harder than I expected, like I was some stranger who'd turned his back on them. Never mind the years of wiring money home, the Christmases spent alone in base housing, the damn care package I sent when Mom had shingles that nobody acknowledged. I was the son who left, and he was the one who stayed. That's all they saw. I made my choice, I repeated. You pushed me out. You could have stayed if you really wanted to. Mom cut in, folding a pair of socks like she was folding this entire conversation into the drawer too. But you were always chasing something. Some degree, some job, some thing. I was chasing stability, I snapped. I was chasing not having to beg for approval every damn day. Derek stood up now, smirking like this was entertainment. You always were dramatic. You ever break ice off water troughs at 5 a.m. before school? I shot back. You ever haul hay bales through a July heatwave? No, you were in your room blasting EDM while I fixed the busted gate Dad ran through. Enough, my dad barked. This land's already been divided. Don't come back here stirring up bad blood. I looked at them. Really looked. And it hit me. They'd already written me out of the story. In their heads, I was just the drifter, the satellite kid who floated too far out. This place, this land, this family, it was all Derek's now. Fine. I picked up the folder and left without another word. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my truck outside the motel, just staring at the dashboard. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even surprised. I was tired. Tired of trying to be the better son. Tired of swallowing my voice to make room for their comfort. The next morning, I called a friend of mine, Terry, who works at a small law firm in Lexington. I asked him how complicated it would be to have Grandpa officially transfer the North lot to me. He asked for a scan of the paperwork. I sent it. 10 minutes later, he texted, "You're in the clear. That land can be yours." I didn't tell anyone. Not Derek, not Mom, not Dad. I didn't see the point. Over the next few weeks, while I was back in the city working, Terry helped push the transfer through. Grandpa signed willingly. I handled the fees. It wasn't cheap, but it felt necessary. About a month later, I got a notification from the county office. Deed transfer complete. I stared at it for a long time. My name. My land. Finally. But then something strange happened. I started getting voicemails from Derek. The first was casual. "Hey bro, heard you were back in town. You left kinda quick? Let's catch up?" Then one from Dad. "There's been some confusion about the deed. Call me when you can." Then it escalated. Mom left a voicemail in tears. "Travis, please don't do this. That part of the land is crucial to Derek's project. We already have investors. You'll ruin everything." Wait, what? I called Terry and asked him to look into any liens or development filings involving the North 32 acres. The next morning, he called back. "They've been using your grandfather's land as collateral for a private loan." And just like that, everything clicked. They never told Derek the land wasn't fully theirs. He'd already taken out money on something he didn't own. They built their dream on ground that never belonged to them. And I was holding the foundation. I don't know how to explain the feeling of holding something over the heads of the people who spent their lives making you feel small. It's not joy. Not really. It's more like clarity. Cold, sharp, and completely undeniable. Once I found out Derek had used Grandpa's land, my land now, as collateral for some big investor scheme, I couldn't stop picturing the smug way he leaned back in Dad's chair that night, like he already owned the whole damn world. So I dug deeper. Turns out Derek had borrowed close to $200,000 from a group of private investors in Nashville. His big plan? turn the old family farm into a sustainable glamping retreat. Seriously, luxury tents, goat yoga, locally sourced brunches, the whole Instagram circus. He even had a website mock-up with a logo, the Rustic Revival. What a joke. The problem? The collateral agreement named the entire 90-acre property, including the 32 acres that legally belong to me now. His whole fantasy was built on land he didn't own, with money he couldn't repay. And the clock was ticking. If I did nothing, the investors would come calling. But I didn't want that. I wanted control. I wanted them to squirm knowing the damage was coming from me. So I made my move. I contacted the lead investor, a guy named Blake, some tech bro turned real estate cowboy, and requested a meeting. I told him I had information about the land deal he might want to know. We met in a coffee shop just off the highway. He was younger than I expected. Cocky, sure, but not stupid. I laid out everything. The deed transfer, the rightful ownership, the pending legal risk. I even handed him a notarized copy of the title in my name. When he realized Derek had leveraged property that wasn't his, I saw the blood drain from his face. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because I want the debt," I said. He blinked. "You want his debt?" "I want to buy it out. Full value. Today." He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. But cash talks. I wired the money that afternoon. And just like that, I wasn't just the landowner. I was now Derek's creditor. Let that sink in. That night, I drove back to the farm unannounced. Pulled in just before sunset. Derek was outside, hammering a crooked wooden sign that said, "Coming soon, the Rustic Revival." I stepped out of my truck, papers in hand. He looked up, smirked. "You back to wine some more?" "No," I said. "I'm here to inform you that I'm your new lender." He frowned. "What?" I handed him the documents. He skimmed the first page, then the second. His mouth slowly fell open. "This is a joke." "Nope." You bought my loan?" "I did. Which means I can now collect. And since you've defaulted on your payment schedule, I can begin asset seizure." He tore the papers in half and threw them on the ground. "You wouldn't do that." "You sure?" I said, calm as ever. "You really think I'm bluffing?" He lunged toward me, eyes wild, and for a second I thought he might swing. But he didn't. He just stood there, fists clenched, breathing heavy. Then the front door opened. Dad stepped out holding a beer. "What's going on out here?" Derek spun around. "Travis bought my debt. He's trying to destroy the whole project." Dad looked at me, confused. "That true?" I shrugged. "Depends how you define destroy. I'm just cleaning up what you let fall apart." "You have no right," Derek shouted. "Actually," I said, pulling the final page from my folder. "Here's the kicker." I handed it to my dad. He read it slowly. His face twisted in horror. It was a notice of intent to foreclose. On the entire farm. Because in their blind arrogance, they'd tied the whole property into the collateral, even the parts they did own. They bet the farm on Derek's dream. Now I held the deed and the debt. And I was done playing nice. Thanksgiving at the farm used to mean something. Grandpa carving the turkey with his old hunting knife, the dog sneaking scraps under the table, cousins passing mashed potatoes down a line that always skipped Derek for some reason. It was loud, chaotic, imperfect, but real. This year? It was a circus. They invited me, probably out of guilt or pride. I still don't know which. But I showed up. Not to celebrate. Not to eat. I came with one reason. To make them say it to my face. The living room was decked out like some faux country Airbnb. Plaid throw pillows, reclaimed wood signs that read, "Gratitude is the attitude." Derek was giving a tour to some out-of-town partners, bragging about how the Rustic Revival would be up and running by spring. When he saw me walk in, he froze mid-sentence. "Look who decided to come home," he said, all teeth. I ignored him. Mom greeted me with her version of warmth. 2 quick pats on the shoulder and a comment about how thin I looked. Dad didn't even try to hide the cold. I nodded to him. He sipped his beer and stared out the window. Dinner started tense. Every time I opened my mouth, someone changed the subject. When I mentioned the loan, Derek cut me off. "This isn't the time, man." When I asked about repayment plans, Mom dropped her fork like I'd cursed in church. So I waited. Let them eat. Let them drink. Let them build their little world for one last meal. When dessert hit the table, I stood. "I've got something to share," I said, loud enough that the entire room went still. Dad raised an eyebrow. "This isn't the place." I smiled. "It's the perfect place." I pulled out a manila folder from my coat, set it right on the table next to the pumpkin pie. "Inside this," I said, "is the official foreclosure notice. Signed. Filed." Final Derek's face drained like someone pulled the plug. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "You wouldn't." "I did," I said. "You leveraged everything on a fantasy, on a brand that doesn't exist. And now I'm cashing in." The room exploded. Derek launched out of his chair, shouting about betrayal, about how I was ruining his future. Dad slammed his hand on the table, yelling that I was tearing the family apart. Mom just sat there, shaking, muttering, "We built this for you. All of it. For you." And that's when I said it. "No," I replied calmly. "You built this around me, without me. And now you're going to watch it fall, with me holding the matches." Then came the twist. One of Derek's partners, a tall woman in a navy blazer, stood up slowly and said, "Mr. Walker, is it true this land was used as collateral without clear ownership?" Derek stammered, I thought the deed was already transferred." She nodded grimly. "Then I suggest you call your lawyer. Because if the project's foundation was misrepresented, you may be liable for investor fraud." The room dropped into silence. Even the turkey seemed to stop steaming. I looked at Dad. "You didn't just screw me. You let him dig a grave with your name on it." No one spoke after that. I turned and walked out while Derek shouted my name, like he just realized for the first time I wasn't coming back. I didn't slam the door, didn't burn anything. I just left them sitting in the home they tried to erase me from, now staring down a collapse they can't control. The foreclosure went through 3 weeks after Thanksgiving. No shouting, no lawsuits, just signatures, stamps, and silence. I didn't show up in person. Didn't need to. Terry handled everything. By the time the final paperwork was filed, the farm, every acre of it, was legally mine. The north lot, the old barn, the chicken coops, the field my grandpa used to walk with his dog every evening. It was all under my name now. Derek tried to fight it at first. He made a few loud phone calls to the bank, probably thinking someone would step in and save him. But investors don't care about tears, especially when you lie on paper. Once his main backer realized Derek had signed off on land he never owned, they pulled out and slapped him with a breach of contract claim. He'll be paying that off for a long time, assuming he finds a job. Last I heard, he moved in with his girlfriend's parents in Nashville. His Instagram's gone private, and the Rustic Revival domain is up for sale. As for my parents, Dad stopped speaking to me completely. Mom tried once, left a voicemail asking if I'd consider leasing the house back to them for a modest fee. I didn't respond. Not to be cruel, just I was done explaining why I had a right to what I built and what they threw away. Funny thing is, I didn't keep the house either. I moved out the day after the deed transfer finalized, rented it to a young couple who'd just had a baby and needed space to breathe. They send me photos sometimes of the vegetable beds I helped dig as a kid, now filled with green onions and peppers. The porch looks better with their rocking chairs on it anyway. I live about 20 minutes away now. Smaller place, quieter, still got my tools, still work with my hands, still hear the barn owl at night if the wind's right. But the best part? Grandpa's workbench is in my garage now. I brought it with me. Every Sunday, I sand and seal one piece of wood, just like he used to do. And every Sunday, I think, you didn't win, old man. You endured. That farm could have been a legacy, but they turned it into a weapon, and they lost it trying to cut me out of my own bloodline. I didn't need revenge. I needed peace, and I got it, on my terms. If you've made it this far, here's what I learned. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most will still expect you to save them. And walking away doesn't make you heartless. It means you finally chose yourself. If this story hit home in any way, feel free to drop your own in the comments. I read them all, even the messy ones. And if you want to hear more stories like this, real stories that bite a little, well, you know where to find me. Thanks for listening.